Thank you so much, Sarah. So apologize for the technical difficulties, guys. Thank you for being patient. We just want a couple housekeeping rules. Under the handout section, feel free to download the PowerPoint. It takes a little bit of time, so if you want to do that now, probably I'd say here in a little bit you'll be able to view it as we go along if you want to take any notes. There's a chat feature as well, so feel free to ask any questions that you may have as we go through the presentation. So to begin, just want to tell you guys a little bit about who we are. As Sarah mentioned, I am the coordinator for career mentoring at Clarion University. I'm also a liaison to the College of Business and Information Sciences. Some main responsibilities: I am the sole administrator for our mentoring program here at the institution, the internship clearinghouse, do all the career advising essentials, and I also do data collection and graduation outcome reporting for each individual college at the institution.
Yes. Thanks, Sarah, for the introduction, and thank you, everyone, for sticking with us through the technical difficulties. My name's Ashley Kruger, and I am located in lovely Lawrence, Kansas. I am a career advisor senior with the School of Business through the university, and my main responsibilities are my School of Business mentorship program. It's my baby. I'm the sole administrator for it, but in addition to that, I work one-on-one with students in career advising, all School of Business students from undergraduate to Master of Accounting, and then I also coordinate our office's social media presence as well as our website development, and I teach in the side as well, a career development course through the fall semester.
So when Ashley and I were creating this presentation, and I know when I go to other conferences or events, I always like to hear a little bit about what the institution looks like, what's their culture, so then I can kind of gauge, well, how does this fit Clarion's culture? And if they have a group of 15 people in their office, well, we only have 5, so how in the world can we do that? So Ashley and I want to explain to you a little bit about what our culture is like within the offices. So as we said, we are each the individual sole administrators for our mentoring software programs, and they're both managed through our career services. Ours was initially piloted with our School of Business, much like Ashley's in too, but now ours has actually turned university-wide, so we're slowly implementing it across all disciplines. The College of Business Administration, the student population is about 850. Clarion in general is a little over 5,000. We're located in rural Pennsylvania, right on Interstate 80. There is nothing to do here, but we're 2 hours away from a majority of things. So it's good for the students. And then you can see what the popular majors are specifically within the College of Business. So anything I really talk about today are going to be examples from the time the program was piloted with the College of Business.
Yes, and so as Josh mentioned before, we are both through career services, and our programs are managed through career services, and later on I'll talk about benchmarking and how I found that some programs are managed differently through different offices and different units. My program is school focused, so it is only School of Business students. I work with some pre-business students, but I think that's important to note. My direct student population is about 1,700 that ebbs and flows, and in my program I have about 100 students off and on that go through the program and get matched up with mentors. As I mentioned before, we're located in Lawrence, Kansas. We're about 30 minutes west of KC, so we are a college town. We're not very rural. It is more of a large town, small city environment, but we're close to Kansas City, and so we have a lot of alums that are pulled from Kansas City, and a lot of students who graduate from our college and end up in the Kansas City area. I am speaking from business, and so my most popular majors are accounting and finance by far. We have 7 majors in our school, and our program is open to all 7 majors, as well as pre-business students. And so many of my students are with accounting and finance, but I have students from really all over. And I am that sole administrator, and so I'll talk more about how I inherited the program a little bit and manage it as that sole person.
Perfect. So before we get into the actual content of our programs, we want to explain to you guys some factors that we face and you may face as well. Particularly here at Clarion, a budget was a big factor. Actually, our program originated out of a meeting where the provost was sitting in a business advisory council meeting, and one of the council members said, I went through a mentoring program when I was in school at Johns Hopkins. Why don't we have one here at Clarion? And the provost said, well, let's do it and I'll fund it. So that's kind of where I came from. But we weren't given any extra monies whenever the budget was allocated. So we did utilize money within our current budget here in the office. So that is something to consider. You're going to hear Ashley and I say this a lot about the budget and how that will definitely impact you, whether you're purchasing a software, you're not purchasing a software. So we'll get into that here in a little bit. The engagement, both on the student and alumni side, is very important. Factors specifically, you don't want to over recruit students, especially if you don't have the alumni for that specific major, or vice versa. You would hate to recruit a handful of alum and then they don't have students to mentor, and it kind of gets a sour taste in both of their mouths, and you might lose them through that engagement. And we work really hard to try to get these individuals to participate in our program. Much like Ashley stated, we're right around 100 as well, active users. We're a little over that with those that are kind of dormant, but they'll come back on and off on occasion. Faculty and staff buy-in, extremely important, and we're going to talk about that here in a little bit as well. And specifically alumni relations, that collaboration, for us, if we didn't have them, this would not be possible, because they have a database and a clearinghouse of all alum. So for us to tap into that was extremely important for our outreach.
Yeah, and at our university, it's a little different. So our program was actually driven by board members and alumni, and specifically board members in the School of Business. And so really all of our academic departments are driven by a lot of alumni engagement. And so this came directly from alumni who really saw a gap between our students and alumni, and wanted to get alumni involved in more ways that wasn't just focused on money, right? And we had a lot of alums, especially in the Kansas City area, who said, how can I give back? How can I engage with your students? I can give money, but I want to give more than that. And we also didn't really have a solid budget early in the program. Actually, I inherited this program. I was hired on in 2014, and before I was hired on to solely work on the project, it was a side project of someone else in my office. And so there wasn't a strong established budget. Career Services absorbed a lot of the costs associated with events or mentor gifts or food, or really anything that came about, room reservations even. Career Services absorbed that cost, and I'm lucky that I had a supervisor who was willing to say, yes, we can have a little bit of a budget, but it wasn't solely dedicated to the mentoring program for our school. Eventually, we were able to get some donor funds, so that actually came into play about a year ago now. We had a donor step forward and wanted to fund a little bit of our program, and so that really helps a lot, and that is an external factor that really has affected my program in a significant way. Josh mentioned faculty staff buy-in. Working in a centralized, I think, siloed community, the faculty staff buy-in is one of the biggest ways that I recruit students into this program, and even get alumni after they've graduated from KU into the program. And so I work very closely with our area directors in different departments to talk about this program with students. I send faculty and staff different updates throughout the semester about what the program is doing and how students can get involved. And as I mentioned, I inherited this program, so I was hired on in 2014. This was part of my job description, and so it wasn't necessarily a side project for someone anymore. This is something that I took on, and I've tried to grow the program since then. Our program is focused on career and professional development, so I think that's something to keep in mind too, is what do you want from this program? And Josh and I will talk a little bit about how important learning objectives are and what you want out of the program, but that is something that I know our alumni really, really cared about.
And much like Ashley said, I was actually brought on in 2015, so almost 2 years now, and my sole purpose was to create this program. So from here on out, what you guys are going to hear is we're going to start from the beginning, really the research and what we found. And the question I was tasked with was with my director. He said, Josh, you need to create an innovative yet robust mentoring program. And I said, Bill, well, how do I do that? What information is out there? What have you guys gathered? And he looked at me and said, nothing. You have to figure it all out. So off to the races I went, and I started contacting 10 other colleges and universities across the country that had some type of formal mentoring program. And some of those universities are listed, and as Ashley mentioned, that's kind of how we interact, and that's how we got to know one another. What I found through that those findings that none of the individuals were formally or really intentionally preparing their students to be mentored. Now, you may be thinking, well, of course, we're all doing that. Yes, we are. But no one was doing it in kind of in line, a linear fashion with a mentoring program. So what we did is we created what's called CU Professional during the same time we were creating CU Mentor, which is our mentoring program. And I want you to keep in mind, when I was hired, I was given 2 years to prove a mentoring program's worth. So we were a 2-year pilot program. I created the program in 4 months, and at month 9, that it was turned university-wide, and we were given approval to make it go university-wide. So we did this very quickly, but we learned a lot, and those are the things that we're going to share with you today. But as we were preparing our students to be mentored through CU Professional, we kind of caught on to something. And before I get into that, I'm going to let Ashley tell you a little bit about her research and findings.
Yeah, one of the first things that I actually started when, or looked into when I started in 2014 was doing an assessment of the current program that I had inherited and figuring out what mentees were saying about the program and what mentors were saying about the program, and what did I need to clarify, what was the purpose of the program, and should there be more structure, and what needed to happen, essentially. And so that was way back in 2014. And I figured out that if I was going to grow the program, I needed to grow too, and I needed to really try to think about how I was going to scale this program. Our program started in 2014 with 33 students and 33 mentors being matched up. I had a larger database, and actually some of our first mentors came from the alumni from the finance board who wanted to start this program. And so I already had a little bit of a pool of mentors to pull from. I had students, but our dean in particular wanted this program to grow. I wanted it to grow. I felt it was valuable. And so I started thinking about, how do I attract alumni? How do I get them involved? How do I scale this program? So one of the first things I did was actually start to think about, how can I prepare my mentees a little bit better? And I'll talk a little bit more about that in program development. But really what that meant is that my benchmarking and that my research and looking into how my program can grow, it evolved into a 2-part process. I started looking at what do other institutions do well, and I researched into institutions, not only peer institutions to the University of Kansas, but aspirational institutions, smaller institutions. I really looked at anyone who had a mentoring program and was willing to talk to me, and again, that's how Josh and I met. And I looked at, what can I do better, and what are other programs doing to help make sure that their students were being properly, I think, educated and trained in the mentoring relationship, and knowledgeable about the expectations and how to go about that relationship. It also started making me think, is a matching software in my future? And so many programs, including Josh and I, we started with Microsoft Excel, and we started actually matching up students and keeping data on Microsoft Excel spreadsheets. And so as I started doing some benchmarking and thinking about how I wanted to grow the program, I thought to myself, can I do this on a Microsoft Excel sheet, or do I need to expand to a platform? And we'll talk more about matching software and what that is, and how we came to those decisions on our own. The reason why I was thinking about matching software is that as I grew the program, it became harder to work with those moving parts. And that was something that really drove a lot of my thought process with that, definitely.
So now we're going to actually dig into, for me, since I was creating something from scratch, how I began to think about developing this program. So as Ashley mentioned a little bit ago, the importance of learning objectives and how we're going to talk about that, that was the first thing that was created. Doing all the research, speaking with all the institutions, they said if you don't have a clear defined path and goals to follow, it's not going to work. So I sat down, really looked, and I compared our learning objectives to what the NACE career readiness competencies are, to ensure that we're incorporating these competencies within our objectives, so that way we know students are obtaining the skills that they need to be successful when they leave college. And we also educate our mentors in the same light. Now this is looking in the future, but that's where my thought process was going in the beginning. Some other documentation that was created, specifically consistent marketing and promotional materials. We actually created a brand. If you haven't caught on already, one is CU Mentor, the other is CU Professional. And that is actually spread across the university now, where little mentoring program that was a non-existent actually changed the way we do marketing. But that consistency is very important because it is something that the students catch on to, and they understand what that brand is telling them. And when they look at any type of promotional materials, it directly links them back to, okay, I need to go talk to Josh, or hey, that's the mentoring program, I heard about that. One extremely important piece I know for myself was the development of our website. The website, which will be listed here at the end of the presentation, is clarion.edu/CU Mentor. And that website is truly a one-stop shop. It needs to cater to not only students and the alumni or professional volunteers that are our mentors, but it caters to the administration, the faculty, the staff, parents, our colleagues here at the institution. As you guys look through that site, you're going to see that there are success stories, video testimonials, we have infographics, that's where they actually create a profile to enter the program, which we'll get to in a little bit, and then some resources that are available to them. So when in doubt, we always send them to that site, which was a huge piece. So working with our development team to kind of coach me up on how I can do that appropriately was very important early on in the process. Commitment forms, we changed this a little bit now that we have an up-to-date software, but this commitment form was really the algorithm that I created from scratch where we made our matches. So the algorithm that I created goes off a lot of commonalities, meaning demographic commonalities, geographic, things that they want to do after graduation. So what our students are doing, or they're filling out this commitment form that it's telling me exactly what they are looking for or they aspire to be after graduation. And then similarly, the mentor's doing the same thing, but what they're saying is, here's what I've done and here's how I can help the student. And based off of those responses, my algorithm kind of generates a list of, here are the best suited matches, and then I go in and I look at each individual on a human level, I guess, instead of a computer doing it and then making the match manually myself. That's one piece, but we'll get to that too. So as Ashley stated, software is going to be a big piece of our conversation today. We started in Excel. I can tell you that I piloted the pilot program with 4 individuals. It took me 3 hours to make that match, and I said, this is impossible. This isn't going to work when I have 100 people. So where can I go from here, and how can I do this if we don't have a budget to purchase a $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 software? So I researched a lot of webinars, and we'll kind of talk about that here in a little bit. And assessment is extremely important, understanding how I was going to track everything, and we have a slide dedicated on our assessment techniques that we're going to share with you today.
So how did I start this program, I guess, and how did I develop the program? The program started in 2012, actually, and so it literally did start with a Microsoft Excel sheet. It started with alumni from our finance board who wanted to really give their information in. We had an online application form that they would fill out with their company information and their professional background, their name, their email, their phone number, their location, and we would have the same thing for mentees. And so we started it doing that way, and I would collect that data through a Microsoft Excel sheet. And in the early parts of the program, up until last year even, we had hand matching where I would have students submit an online application with a resume, with their academic information and why they're interested in being mentored and what type of career paths and industries that they're interested in. And I would print off those applications, and I would look through each application, each resume, and then compare that with my mentor database to really find the best match. And then I would keep track of who was being matched up with who through the Microsoft Excel spreadsheet. As Josh mentioned, this is a tedious process, to be completely honest. It took maybe 2 weeks, honestly, for me to go through a lot of the applications and for me to match students and mentors up. And that was at the beginning when we had about 50 applicants. It was something that was doable. And I want to actually counter what Josh is saying a little bit to just say that if you are looking at a small program, Microsoft Excel is possible, and it's something that you can use, especially if you don't necessarily have the budget to spend on a $15,000 software. That is something that you can do. However, in Josh and I's experience, we found that if you wanted to scale the program to be larger than perhaps 50 or 75 matches, that's where a software makes things a lot more efficient and a lot more streamlined when you're putting those programs together. And so going back to how my program was developed and what materials I was starting to put together for my students as well as my alumni mentors. From the assessment that I did right in the beginning, when I was looking at what were the needs and clarifying those, I figured out pretty quickly that many times the mentees had no idea what they were doing, and that the students had really no knowledge of how to go about the professional mentoring process. For many of these students, they were 18, 19 years old. They were first year, second year students. And many of our students on campus are more traditional aged even. And so they had no idea how to go about the networking process even. And so one of the first things I did was actually develop a handbook. So I have a mentee handbook as well as a mentor handbook that goes through actually different guidelines. I set program expectations and really talk about how they are now accountable to someone else, that they are in a professional relationship, that this is a structured, formal program. But I also go through other types of guidelines, such as questions that they can ask their mentors, how to establish goals, how to really not only establish SMART goals and measurable and actionable goals, but also how to communicate that to their mentor. And then also I go through activities on what they can do with their mentor, especially since I think many students think of mentoring as just grabbing a cup of coffee with someone and asking them about their life. Mentoring can be so much more than that. And so I encourage students to be creative on how they approach the mentoring process with their mentor, and I think the handbook does a good job of setting those expectations and getting those guidelines out there. I do the same thing for mentors too. So I actually have a handbook for them, and I also go through the timeline and expectations, how often it's recommended to meet with their students or speak with their students. I provide them also with questions that they can ask their students or questions that they may be asked and how they can prepare for those conversations, as well as those activities. And as always, I'm very forthcoming with putting my email and my phone number out there to let them know that they can come to me and have any questions. I do essentially act as a liaison between a lot of my mentors and mentees to really streamline that communication and make sure that everyone's staying engaged. For all the mentees in my program, I do require them to go through an orientation with me. And so when I find them a mentor match, I will inform the students and say, I have an alumni mentor for you. In order to receive this person's information, in order to be approved in our software platform that I'll talk about later on, they have to go through an in-person orientation with me. And that's where I go through that handbook that I mentioned. And I go through expectations, and I set some of those really program responsibilities and what's going to be expected of them and those professional guidelines. So that was one of the first things I did to develop the program and to grow it even more. One of the other things that I also did, and I'll second what Josh was saying, is doing marketing and outreach and doing it well. We had a new website, actually, business.ku.edu/mentorship-program is our website. And it was a way that I can really get all of the information about the program out for anyone to view. And so if anyone had questions, it was out there on the internet and they could Google, or they can actually go to our alumni page and have access to that as well through our school business website. So I wanted to make sure that it was a streamlined process, that there was transparency, that mentors knew what was going on, and also that we had some branded promotional materials. So I actually started creating logos. At first, they were really bad logos because I'm terrible at Adobe InDesign, and later on, I was able to get a student to create some of those logos for me, and now I have logos that go on my handbooks as well as a lot of the website that have all the marketing materials on them. So that was a way that I could really send out that link to students, alumni, faculty and staff, anyone who was interested in learning more about the program. I just established that website and sent that out. Matching processes were a little bit of a changing process as well. When the program first started, we matched up students once every semester, once in the fall, usually in October, and then once in the spring in March. And again, we had mentors who could apply anytime to be in the program, and I had that database of mentor information. And a student would apply in October or March, and I would take that student application pool and match them up. We switched to about once a year last year, actually, and I found that administratively that really helped keep track of a lot of the details that were involved in our program and just keep track of a lot of the moving parts. And when I say moving parts, I mean things like maybe a student switches a major, switches career industry interests, and they no longer want to be with that particular mentor. And so I would I guess, unmatch them, quote unquote, and match them with a new mentor. But I had to keep track of that process somehow. And so once a year made that a little bit easier to work with. And now our program is actually rolling matching. And so I'm able to do that because I did have the funds available to switch to a software. But I have heard of other programs who do rolling matching and do it through the Microsoft Excel spreadsheets as well. And so now, anytime a mentor comes to our office and says, I want to get involved, I have a student, usually a student mentee pool who I can pull from and match them up that way. Students can indicate if they want 1 or 2 mentors or even 3 mentors if they feel they have the time. And same for the mentors. The mentors can indicate if they can be reached out to 3 to 4 mentees if they choose. Something that I found when I was developing my program, and still something that I work with now, is that your applications and when you're putting together just the process for putting mentees and mentors together, they should match your program goals. So our program is focused on career development. It's focused on professional development. Students use our program for anything from short conversations, networking, getting to know someone who lives in Dallas or someone who lives in or works in private equity in Chicago, and they want to network, or someone who really just wants to learn more about a particular career path. But all in all, it's very focused on career development. And so it makes sense for my program to include a resume. But however, other programs are more focused on personal development or cognitive development, or talking to students about what's out there and having them focus on a larger, bigger picture on what they could do with their degree. That's not necessarily as focused on professional development, and that's okay. Just that your applications should match your program goals, your materials and your learning objectives should match your goals as well. I had to think about how trainings would work. So in particular, we have a busy fall recruitment timeline process, I guess. And so I had to think about how was I going to actually get students into my office and make time for them in order to go through that orientation. And I ended up just having to manage my projects in a different way. And then how would I keep track of pairs? So in the beginning, using that Microsoft Excel sheets, I would have different tabs with different semesters and different academic years of who's been matched up. But I figured out quickly that if I wanted to scale the program, I would need something a little bit larger than that. So
Very similar to what Ashley was talking about. Now that we created really all the documentation for Ashley updating the documentation, then we moved to how can I implement this and how can I cultivate a university that has never had a mentoring program, knows nothing about a mentoring program. So this was probably the biggest challenge that I faced. And the first, it always came back to the software. So as Ashley mentioned, we both started in Microsoft Excel, which it started out really well. It was a little time consuming, as I mentioned before, but it was that manual matchmaking process. So I piloted it with 4 students, as I stated, just to kind of understand and see were all the documentation that I created efficient enough that everybody understands it. So much like Ashley, the handbooks, the rules, guidelines, expectations, a timeline, all those things were developed. Now I needed to implement it with a group of individuals that I knew would provide me feedback before we reached out to 50, 75, 100 individuals to be able to adapt that to make sure it'll work across all disciplines. The other big piece besides the software was what we call edutainment, educating yet entertaining individuals at the same time. And you'll see what I mean here in a second. So we really educate our Board of Trustees, administration, faculty, and staff. They were probably the hardest to persuade because of the silos that they were in, unfortunately, and this buy-in that had to occur, where I went into every meeting saying, this is nothing more that you guys have to do. I'm here to supplement what you're doing. Just give this a shot. This is what everyone's doing, and that kind of gave them all the research. And here's how it's actually going to benefit our students. For the student side, we created a 4-year career and professional development plan that's engaged on connecting students with resources each of their 4 years here at this institution. So we are actually integrated within the COBIAS, which is our College of Business curriculum. I go into classrooms freshman year through senior year that we have designated that every student has to take, and each year is focused on something specific. Mentoring specifically is a junior year program. That's where we target. So if you're thinking about this, right, I come in, I create a new program, I have to play catch up. But my marketing is, okay, I have to educate freshmen and sophomore that so when they're junior status, they want to be a part of this program. But oh, wait, I have juniors and seniors who have no idea about this program, could benefit from this program. So I can tell you year one was very hectic, if you could imagine. So that was a big piece, but that 4-year plan really helped us to make sure things were streamlined and structured in the way we presented information. I would also present information at orientation and admission days, specifically business-related sessions. You would be surprised how many parents and family and guests love to hear about these types of programs, but it actually makes sense, right? They're paying all this money, they want a return on investment. So if I can tell them that their student is going to be matched with somebody who's successful, that's out in the field, that wants to help them, maybe it's find an internship or a job, their ears kind of, their eyes light up, they perk up a little bit just to make sure to say this place has something maybe somebody else doesn't have. And it really does make a difference. And same at career events. You'll see me at any job fair or consortium event. You best believe I'm working those tables to try to recruit other mentors, because our program is not only alum, but we also have employers and professional partners who are not alumni to the university. And you would be surprised how many of them like it. The piece that they like is, well, if you're giving me a good student, that could be a great part of my recruitment process because I'm getting top talent. So it's all perspective. It's all how you approach that. As I mentioned before, alumni relations, that collaboration was very, very important. I will say it was not easy to have those conversations in the beginning because they hold their database very close to them and they do not let anybody in, at least at our institution. So I do not necessarily have access in it. However, I make one phone call, kind of let them know what I need from them, and they will send any materials out to anybody that I need. But I will say it didn't come without a cost. And the way I approached that was that the mentors that I receive, I'm going to have all their updated information, address, phone number, emails, work, salary, all these types of things based off of what I'm collecting. I can provide that to you at the end of the year. So you scratch my back, I scratch yours kind of deal. So I can tell you from learning through this experience that if you go in and you sell it to them in a way, or whomever, in a way that benefits the individual, not necessarily you first, obviously that's what they're going to like to hear that. Through that collaboration, we were also given access to the phone-a-thon script, so we're actually in that script, which has been very helpful. And here's why. Between probably a majority of our mentors are between 5 and 10 years of experience outside of graduation. That may surprise you, but the more we looked into it, think about it. For a majority of them, they love the institution. They want to come back and they want to help, but they can't give monetarily. So this program is a great way to provide a non-monetary volunteer their time to help us, to help students, and to give back to the institution. So that was another way we worked to kind of sell the program, not only for the mentor recruitment, but just in general to everybody, all the players in the game.
Yeah, and I think for program management, that was one of the biggest things that I work on now is how to manage this program once the students are really matched up with their mentor, and how to keep everyone happy and keep everyone engaged. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about how I use Microsoft Excel and how I now use matching software and how that program management was affected. So when I was using Microsoft Excel, it was essentially an email database. So I would just keep track of all their emails within a particular tab, and I would manually have to update information. So whenever a mentor got a new job or switched companies or moved to a new city, I would send out emails maybe about once every summer, is usually our downtime here at our university. I would email them and ask, just wanting to update your information, making sure that this is still accurate and keeping that information correct in our system. This was a little tedious, however. Sometimes I would get bounce backs of emails. I would get mentors who wouldn't answer. I would get mentors who maybe dropped off and weren't necessarily as engaged, especially if they hadn't been yet paired with a student. And so when I moved over to matching software, many matching software actually integrate with LinkedIn, so that made the updates very easy. So if a mentor or even a student as a user updated their LinkedIn, it would automatically integrate into the matching software, and so I don't necessarily have to do as much of updates as I did when I had to do Microsoft Excel. Further management that I do just throughout the year is I make a really concentrated effort to send monthly or at least every 6 to 8 weeks emails to mentors and mentees that are already matched in the program. I think this is one of the biggest ways that I keep them engaged. I think sometimes many mentor relationships, they'll have that first conversation over the phone or meeting in person, having a cup of coffee. They'll have some questions that are answered. They'll have a nice conversation, but then it maybe drops off after that. And so I have a formal program that I match up these students and mentors, but try to keep them engaged through every 6 to 8 weeks by sending them emails that are customized to the time of the year. I have emails that go out to mentors to say, hey, it's September, we have a career fair coming up. Here's how you can help your students prepare for the career fair, or here's how you can help them prepare for the recruiting process. And I do the same thing for mentees. I say, it's September, we have a career fair coming up. You should ask your mentor about what the recruitment process looks like, or how they went through a career fair when they were here at the institution. So I encourage students. I have those customized emails that go out to both parties. I encourage students to reach out to their mentors to have that type of career advice. And I talk about different career topics, not just career fairs, but I customize it to our internship deadlines. I customize it to when students are going on spring break or when our academic years and academic breaks are ending. I also try to provide mentoring tips. So I'll scour the internet, and I belong to a lot of career blogs, or I follow a lot of career blogs where I try to collect articles on how to be a great mentor or top questions you should ask your mentor. And so I try to send along those type of articles as well in those monthly emails. So not only are mentors and mentees seeing information from me that I have compiled, but they see it from other institutions, they see it from other types of blogs, career sites, so they can get a really just holistic view of how to go about the mentoring relationship and customize it for what's best for them. That's something I think that is a theme through a lot of our program. Is I don't have any mandates on how often they have to talk. I encourage mentors and mentees to get in touch every 6 to 8 weeks, but I don't really hold them accountable to that. I check in, yes, and I make sure that everything's going well, and I keep them engaged with these emails. But at the same time, I try not to have too much structure, because I found in the past that many students and many mentors, one, don't have time to be babysat like that, and wouldn't prefer it. They would like to have less structure, at least in our program. It may not be like that for every program, for sure. I also hold events. I haven't held events in the past year, so just because of budget cuts. However, early in our program, I would have events. I would have a kickoff event at the beginning of the year to really have mentors and mentees meet one another in person. And then I would have an end of the year kind of mentee-mentor luncheon where I would celebrate what their relationship has done in the past year. At that end of the year event, I would have the Mentor and the Mentee of the Year awards. So I just set up a quick SurveyMonkey for mentors and mentees to log in and nominate their counterpart for an award of the year. And so that's been a popular process. I've had that for 2 years now. This coming year will be my third. And it's really great to hear from mentors and mentees about how their mentor or mentee has been fantastic and how they've really contributed to the relationship. And so that's kind of a way that I also keep mentors involved, is and learn about the process and learn about how the relationship is going, for sure.
So now we're going to talk about the assessment piece of the program. For me, I think it's the most important, because this gives us the ability to make sure we're adapting our program. As Ashley mentioned earlier, growing the program is very important, but if the right person isn't in place to be able to adapt with the growth of the program, especially when you're trying to scale it at a very large scale, it can be very difficult. So what we do at Clarion is I provide a mid-year and end of the year assessment. This mid-year assessment, very few questions. I think it's 4 or 5 questions, more open-ended. How are things going? What's not going well? What are you liking so far? Or what could I do to make anything better for you? Where the end of the year is much more in depth, there are a lot of Likert scale questions where it's focusing on achieving the outcomes, the learning objectives. I'm trying to gauge how we're doing business, essentially, and if things are working. We also conduct focus groups where this has probably been the biggest impact of our feedback. We hold mentee and mentor focus groups. Our mentor focus groups are virtual because we cover so many states across the country, and we're in 2 international regions as well. So our focus group is really important, and our students provide us a lot of great information, whether it's matching length, how they want to communicate. As Ashley said, having something very structured is not what they want. They like to come and go as they please and when they need it and what's convenient for them. So that's something we learned as well through our focus group. On the mentor side, one of the specific areas that we learned that what they would like more of is a LinkedIn mentor forum. So what I did was I created a secure LinkedIn group and invited all mentors who have a LinkedIn profile into this group where we share ideas. It gives the other mentors access to one another to say, here's what's working for me. Hey, here's an article I found that's working really well for, Susie, and things are going well with us. Or, hey, do not try this. Here's a horror story. You want to try to stay away from that. And they're learning from one another. So I go in there and I monitor. I provide data. I provide research and articles and updates. Honestly, probably 4 to 6 weeks, very close to what Ashley's doing, because I just want them to let them know we're here, but it's also a nice little nudge because life does happen and sometimes people forget, and that's okay. We get it. Trust me, we understand that. Some other things for the assessment, we are also tying in our mentor program towards graduation outcomes. So for us to be able to track where our grads are going, specifically the ones who have participated in our programs, that will only help us whenever we're trying to educate others throughout the university as we move through other disciplines, and the students. That'll help as well. We always gather success stories from our assessment pieces, and those success stories I then turn and translate into stories at our website or on our website, which again, you guys can see that it's there. And then I'll always finish with the learning objectives, changing things up, trying to set new standards, a higher bar, trying to beat myself from last year to make sure our program is constantly growing and constantly adapting.
I do that as well. I am always looking to see what other programs are doing and how I can better our program. Absolutely. So I agree with the learning objectives. I'm always looking out for how I can better the program. So formally, I do send out a formal assessment to mentors and mentees at the end of each year. I usually do it around April, May. So coming up, actually, it's on my to-do list. I do informal check-ins about once every 6 to 8 weeks. I basically send them an email and say, hey, just checking in. I want to make sure that everything is going well with your relationship, because like Josh said, sometimes things happen, and sometimes the mentor won't return an email, or sometimes the mentee gets really busy with midterms and that communication lacks off. And so I just put myself out there and say, do you need help? Can I answer any questions? And be, I guess, a sense of help with that, and just some guidance that can help. And so our current software also tracks user activity, and so I can see who is logged into the platform and how they've been using the platform. I didn't have that before with Microsoft Excel. Before, when I was just using Microsoft Excel, I essentially would connect the students and mentors through an email and then let them do their thing. Like I didn't have a lot of formal assessment besides those informal check-ins and the formal assessment to mentors and mentees at the end of the year. And so now I get to see how often they engage with each other in the platform, and how long they engage with each other with video or text messages or anything like that. We also tie our mentoring program into graduation outcomes. So I do ask students through our office, they have to report their internship or job. And so I ask students, have you been a part of the mentorship program here at the School of Business? And how has the mentoring program impacted your job outcomes, or your job search, or your professional life outside or after KU? And so I track that. I have that information for, I think, about 2 years now. I put that into our graduation outcomes a couple years ago. And then finally, I just do testimonials, and that's something that I'm working on right now. Our school actually gained a resource. His name's Michael, and he makes phenomenal videos, and he's helping me put together actual video and text testimonials from past mentors and mentees, just as one promotional materials, but it also lets me know how the program's going for a lot of people, and get some of those actual video conversations and have people record it.
So now we're going to move into the matching software. I also understand I want to be sensitive to your guys' time. I know we started a little late, so we'll try to move through this quickly, but yet still provide good information to you all. So go ahead, Ash.
Yeah, So matching software, why and what it is, and why you could consider it, why it could be a good fit for you. So matching software is essentially software that aids in the matching process as well as management of mentoring pairs. And so it can be anything from student to alumni like Josh and I have, or it can be alumni to alumni, it could be student to student, it could be faculty to student. There are a lot of different vendors out there that can do this for you, or you can build your own. And so I have a vendor that I work with, but Josh has a homegrown system. And so there's different avenues that you can take if this is an option for you. Matching software or just these types of platforms, these type of softwares, can also act as a database. So you can start to collect user information and collect who is in your program, even if you don't have a matching tool associated with that. They usually collect that data and they track that user activity, as I mentioned before. It's handy for reporting. So just the other day, my dean came down and said, can you tell me who is in your program in terms of major and how many students? I was easily able to put that report together and have him talk about it in a meeting that was 15 minutes later. One con to it is that cost can be prohibitive, and so this is something absolutely to consider, and that was something that was heavy on my mind. I was fortunate that alumni donated the money to fund my software, but without that money, I wouldn't have been able to do this because I just frankly did not have the budget, and so my status quo would have been using Microsoft Excel. And so where that cost can really help with that is reaching out to alumni who want to give back, and reaching out to your dean's office, reaching out to your alumni, and seeing even your endowment boards and seeing if there's a need for this. I know within our school there are mentors who want to give back in some capacity like this, and see mentoring programs thrive because it's becoming such an important part of the workplace to a lot of millennial students especially that are going into different professional environments. So that is something to consider. Cost can be prohibitive, and is certainly a factor.
And specifically for us at Clarion, cost was a huge prohibitor. It was whenever we were doing the research, as I mentioned, finding out that these softwares that I was demoing were $10, $15, $20,000, and I would go to my director and say, "Is there any way we could probably, make a pitch to get this?" And he laughed and he said, "Of course we can't, Josh. We can't do that." So, with that being said, we continued with Excel, like Ashley and I were explaining. But I would continue to research. I would continue to go through these, kind of go through the motions with demos and webinars to learn really what's out there. Ashley was gracious enough to let me actually go into her software so I could learn from her. And then what we did was an email came through my desk from a department chair on our CS and IS department, and they stated that they were looking for any type of department that was in need of software development. And you best believe I jumped out of my seat. So I went down to the office, had a discussion with John, and for the last 2 years now, we have actually have a homegrown software. Where the first year in the fall of 2015, we took my algorithm that was manual in Excel and we automated it within a web application. Then this past year, I had another group of 8 students that actually made that automated web application into another web application where individuals could go in and actually create and update their profiles, because that was a huge time suck for me, that I had to reach out to each individual, say, here's the information that we have on file, what has changed, what hasn't changed, could you send it back to me? Then I had to go into Excel and into the software and access and change it all. So that was just so tedious. I thought there has to be an easier way. So now individuals can create their own profile. And we actually adapted the program this year, which we'll be rolling out here in the fall, where we have informal versus formal mentoring. The difference between that, which is outlined on our website, you can take a deeper look into it, but very quickly, informal mentoring, the way we have it, it's their short 30-day casual conversations. Students can log in, they'll create their profile, they're going to tell me what they're looking for in that individual, but they can actually select instantaneously who they want to be matched with. and then the matching takes place. Now, there's a lot more into that, but very quickly, that's the way the informal will work. The formal side, as I mentioned before, we create a commitment form as part of the algorithm, which are asking very in-depth questions. And based off those in-depth questions, it generates a report to me, and then I make the best possible match, which is actually a year-long partnership through the academic semesters, which is typically the junior, senior year status, where informal can be any time, which is very popular with our undecided students to go and say, is this really what the major or career I'm looking for? And there are mentors out there that will self-select if they want to be an informal mentor, formal mentor, or they want to do both.
And we have something very similar. So I started with Microsoft Excel, and as that program grew, I kind of figured I would need a new option. With the Microsoft Excel, I was the algorithm. And so, as I mentioned before, I would go through student applications and look through my database and literally use the find tool and find formula to find mentors who worked in private equity or Big Four accounting or wherever my student wanted to end up. And so it wasn't necessarily a foolproof, I guess, matching tool. Now I use PeopleGrove, which is a vendor, and their matching algorithm is a lot more robust and I think a lot more accurate to what our students and mentors would like and how they would like to be matched. And so with that algorithm with PeopleGrove, I can indicate what I want to focus on. And so because our program is very focused on career development, my matching algorithm focuses mostly on industries, but we also have students indicate what companies maybe interest them and as other health topics, so such as answering different career paths or talking about generational differences in the workplace. Even students of color and LGBTQ students can indicate if they want to be matched up with a mentor with similar identities. And so that is why I really like PeopleGrove. I wasn't able to go as in-depth with that with Microsoft Excel.
So for the future, to kind of wrap things up here in the next couple of slides, just some major points that I want to tell you guys, that we're looking to do. Obviously, that university-wide cultivation, we're still moving through each program, the importance of that and how difficult that can be, but educating the departments and the faculty and the staff is very important, and to prove to them through our success stories that this is important and this is how it can change the student's life. We're going to continue developing our softwares. We actually are slated for the fall of this year, 2017, to work with another group of students to make enhancements on our current software. So I think this is a long partnership that we have with the department, and it's great because the students are always teaching me something as well about software and how I can better it. So I'll continue to do the research to try to make ours the best it can be, but hopefully one day we can get a budget so we can actually get a commercial software. But I will say our software, when it was developed, was looked at from some demo companies, and they did mention that it could probably range between $10,000 and $12,000 out in the market, which is really cool for students to say, I created something that a commercial organization created as well. So just something to think about. You can be very creative and innovative just with the resources you have at your institution, and I think you hear that based off of Ashley and my experiences. Very different, but yet our programs are so similar in the same breath. We're going to increase engagement, so student and alumni, continue to push through those channels. I would like to integrate into some type of orientation for the program. That's just something we haven't been able to do yet. We're going to continue developing events that are more mentor specific, so bringing the mentors back. We do it now within career fairs or our professional development day, where we invite our alum and mentors back to serve as panelists or whatever the case may be, and they love that. But we want something more specific for the mentoring program itself, and above all else, we're going to continue to edutain.
So one of the first things that I'm actually developing right now is a professional development fund for students, and so many of my mentors are located actually outside the Lawrence, Kansas City area. I have a large chunk that comes from KC, but I also have mentors in San Francisco, in Dallas, and Chicago, and New York that are very far away from our Midwest city of KC. And so what the Professional Development Fund is that any extra funds that I have come into our office, I try to put it towards this fund, and it's essentially a scholarship for students that they can apply for funds to, one, go see their mentor, go to a conference, buy a professional suit, anything that's really professional and related. They demonstrate need, they fill out an application with me, go through a very entire process of why they need those funds, and I work with our KU endowment to essentially cut a check to the student. I also am looking into how to grow the program with alumni and how to keep them engaged. One of the ways that I would love to keep them engaged is actually by using video conference tools. So as I mentioned, many of my mentors are located outside that Lawrence-Casey area, and so how can I keep them involved and how can I keep them engaged in the program? And there are a lot of tools out there. Brazen Connect is one of them that have online networking chat rooms that allow you to set up an event and have users log in and essentially talk to each other in a chat room format. And that's something I have been considering to see if that would be a way to have students and mentors be able to connect with each other, not just their mentor, but with a variety of different mentors, so they can really use the platform to network as much as possible. Currently, People Grove, the platform I use, does not have that capability, and so something that I am working with is just the funds to be able to work with that and be able to bring that into our school. And as always, trying to do more outreach to students and faculty and staff and alumni, folks that come in. Many of the ways that I have alumni come into our program is by referrals through our dean's office, through our faculty, through other staff even, or people that have come into our office who want to get involved. I say, we have a great mentoring program. Come in and let's talk about it and let's get you involved. I also our office keeps track of alumni just through outcomes and through alumni databases. And so we have alums who say, yes, please take my information. I'd like to have a student reach out to me if needed. And I actually reach out to those students and say, hey, you said you'd love to have a student reach out to you. How do you feel about joining the mentoring program and getting involved that way? And because many of these students are recent grads, they're really eager to get involved and not always getting involved by donating money. And so they're loving being able to get involved by just giving back information. And I also use LinkedIn. I joke that I'm a professional creeper, and I will go into all of our professional groups and see who's out there, who's engaged, who's looking to get involved in our school, and I will connect with them that way and bring them into our program. And then because our office and our program is career services and run through career services, we often have recruiters on campus as well as hiring managers and supervisors and other employees of different companies coming in to interview with students. And so as part of our recruitment package, a folder that they get in that includes their interviewing schedules, I actually have a flyer in there about our program to get them involved. So that's kind of a way that I just a small way that I get that outreach out there and have students and mentors be able to see what's going on.
So kind of give you a rundown of everything that we really want to make sure that you guys take away from today. You can see a majority of it on the screen, but one thing that Ashley kind of put in my mind, which I always tell to the administration, is if you make this program right, it will be successful on its own. And what I mean by that is your recruitment will be very organic. What will happen is, as I'm cultivating a relationship with all my students from our 4-year career and professional development plan, as they go through the mentoring program, as they utilize our services in our office, they, in return, when they graduate, they're going to remember that. And that is our biggest recruitment tool. Those individuals that went through this program come back and become mentors themselves. So it's a really exciting journey to watch those students turn professional and come back and see how much they've learned. So that in itself is its own recruitment cycle. But I think, as Ashley and I always have these conversations back and forth, you may have learned a lot of things about our programs today, but it may not work at your institution because every institution is different and your culture matters. You will know it better than anybody else. So one size does not fit all, and that's okay. But you can take bits and pieces. With some things that Ashley has provided me have worked here, others have not, and it's okay. That's why we adapt and we market and we change our programs and we continue to grow with our programs. So having somebody in this position, if you haven't noticed, who is very passionate like Ashley and I are about our programs, makes a world of difference.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think having someone who's passionate and enthusiastic will really help with burnt out as well. I think especially when you are dealing with a lot of different parties, I think having someone who's really interested in this, in order to do it well, it can't be someone's side project. I think you do have to have someone who is really dedicated to making this program really work very well.
So that kind of concludes the presentation. We do have some time, I believe, for questions, but before we do, I just want to say here's our information. Ashley and I know myself, will be happy to talk with you guys.
Yep.
We love connecting with other individuals to really learn from you all as well. And you really saw a dynamic between Ashley and I where one was already, where I was creating a program where Ashley was kind of reinventing her program to make it best for KU while we were creating something for CU. So I hope you took some good content away from today, but definitely go to our websites. You're going to see a lot of information there, but we would be happy to answer any questions.
Anyone has questions, please go ahead and put those in the chat box and send those over. Right now, I don't see any coming in. There was one that asked about what platforms that you're using, but I think that you had a slide where you went over that, correct? Yes, and in particular, I use PeopleGrove, but there are so many other vendors that are out there. One of PeopleGrove's main competitors, I guess, quote unquote, is actually Campus Tap. And when I was looking into platforms, I wasn't considering Campus Tap because they didn't have a matching tool. However, they've grown a lot, and so they now, I believe, have a matching tool, and they are recruiting at different universities all the time. And so Campus Tap is up there. I would say the cream of the crop that a lot of universities use is actually Cronus. And the one thing that put me against Cronus is that it's expensive. So that is something that that cost can be prohibitive with that. And looking at user type and as well as a limited amount of users can be helpful for what your price point wants to be.
Yeah, the only addition I'd like to make to that, I researched and demoed with all the ones Ashley was saying. The only other one that she did not mention that we looked into was Insala. That was another one that was kind of cutting edge, very innovative. But again, you're looking into some pricey softwares for sure. So just be ready whenever keep that in mind as you're looking through all these and compare price points and what you exactly want your software to provide to you, because you may be paying for more than you actually need.
Yes. No questions except for we got a thank you both from Zach. Oh, thank you, Zach.
You're welcome. Zach.
Okay, we could probably wrap it up. It's good that you guys provided your contact information. That way, if somebody has a question, they can contact you. Sarah, do you want to wrap it up?
Yes. Thank you all for making it for being here to hear about this wonderful set of information that Josh and Ashley shared with us. I just want to plug a couple of upcoming webinars from the Professional Development Committee. We've got two this academic semester. The first is on Monday, April 24th. It's Transition Theory in Practice. It'll go from 11 to noon Eastern Standard Time, and it's presented by Jim Peacock, the principal at Peak Career Consulting. And then the last one of the semester is Generations in the Workplace, presented by Melissa Burgess, the Assistant Director of the IRL School at Cornell University. That will be on Wednesday, May 10th, I apologize, from 2 to 3 p.m. And all of this information can be found on the Eastern ACE website under workshops and webinars.
Great. All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining the webinar. Have a good weekend. Thanks, you too.